since it is One Central, we are going to get started. My name is Jessie Haas, for those of you who don't know me. I am the Senior National Director of the Therapy Animal Program at Pet Partners. We really appreciate you showing up and having a conversation with us about volunteering with your rabbit or your guinea pig. So I would love it if you could all find the chat button for two reasons. Number one, at any point in time, again, we have a small group here. We can handle lots of questions, specific questions about yourself or your pet. So use the chat function liberally while we're presenting. Also at the end, because the group is small, we could all unmute and just have a conversation as well. I'm just asking that you stay muted and use the chat function while we are presenting, just to reduce background noise. The second reason I want you to locate the chat button is I would love to have you type in so we all know where you're from, what kind of animal you have, rabbit or guinea pig, and what your pet's name is. Because with these less common species, oftentimes the names are the best part. So go ahead and type those in. While you're doing that, I'll show you where we are headed in the next hour or so. My goal today and my co-presenter's goal are really to do two things. One, just generally talk about therapy animal volunteerism in a way that isn't species specific. So what do therapy animal teams do? Where do they go? And what is the process to becoming a team? What are all the different steps? But we also want to make sure that we're talking a lot about rabbits and guinea pigs specifically, and what are some of the special considerations for those species? What are the things you need to think about as the owner or the handler of a rabbit or guinea pig? So we're going to do both of those things today, broad and specific. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. So we've got rabbits and guinea pigs represented. Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Oh, a Flemish giant. That's awesome. I love seeing those. I've only met one, I think, in person, but they are amazing. So great. Thank you so much for everybody for typing that in. Speaking of getting into the specifics, I have invited two volunteers with Pet Partners who are aficionados and experts about rabbits and guinea pigs. So I want to allow them to introduce themselves before we go any further. So Elizabeth, if you could go first, that'd be great.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Elizabeth Lynch. This is my pet partner, Moo. I've been with Pet Partners for a very long time. I've handled lots of different animals, but my goal is really to handle all species that Pet Partners registers. I don't know if that will happen or not in my lifetime, but we'll see. I'm also an evaluator, and I was just recently one of the national program educators for Pet Partners, teaching other people how to become evaluators too. So that's been a great role that I'm just rotating off of. But I'm really happy to speak to you today about guinea pigs as therapy animals.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Marcy?
I'm, excuse me, Marcy Ellen Bogan. I've been a rabbit handler for over 30 years, which is amazing for me to say. And I also have a therapy dog, which we're going on, I think, 9 years. We do the read with me with both. Sadly, I just lost my last rabbit. This is his sister, Figgy, but I just lost Newton March 1st. This is Newton. So I don't have a live one to show you. All rescues, all mine have been rescues, all therapy buddies, and they've been great. And we visit multiple facilities, which I guess we will get into later.
We absolutely will. Thanks, Marcy. So stepping back a little bit broadly to what is therapy animal volunteerism, I always like to start with, well, where exactly do you volunteer and why do you volunteer there? So up on your screen, you see a list of facilities or institutions, agencies that accept Pet Partners teams. This list is not exhaustive. We have thousands of teams in thousands of facilities, but this is a pretty solid representation of places where most teams will go at least some of the time. And the reason therapy animals are invited into these facilities is because there is a heck of a lot of research and data about the human-animal bond and the impact it has on education, health, and wellness. And so when you take a look at this list, of course, you see in places like hospitals or in schools, you know, people can't have their pets. There aren't a lot of animals present full-time, but educators and healthcare providers, they know that outcomes are improved in all of these areas if people have the opportunity to interact with animals. So that's where therapy animals come in and why they are invited into these facilities. In terms of what you do when you volunteer, again, that can be quite broad. Some therapy animal visits when you're in a facility are very casual. They are social. It's an opportunity to reduce somebody's isolation or loneliness by having a conversation with them and allowing them to pet your animal. Other visits can be far more formal. As an example, some of our therapy animal teams partner up with physical or occupational therapists. And maybe that's in a rehab center. And the physical therapist is working with the client who's recovering from a surgery and needs to work on fine motor skills. Handling your rabbit or petting your guinea pig is an opportunity, a motivator for people to work through their rehab schedule. Marcial already mentioned reading programs. We know especially young children are extremely motivated to practice their reading if they can do it to an animal, and that can improve literacy outcomes. And then in all of the facilities and all of the visits I just mentioned, stress reduction is a huge part of the role animals can play. So whether this is airports or universities during a finals week, the presence of an animal, interacting with an animal can bring down stress. When stress is brought down, again, health outcomes can improve, education outcomes can improve. So I'm going to pause here and let Marcy and Elizabeth talk a little bit about where they've gone with their rabbits and guinea pigs, what types of facilities you go to, what are some of the things that you do when you're there. Marcy, I'll have you start.
Okay, we go to many facilities. I mean, I sort of made a list. I started at the LA Ronald McDonald House with my first rabbit because back in the day, like 25, 30 years ago, a lot of places would only take dogs and maybe cats. And they're like, well, we don't know about rabbits, you know, so you sort of have to work your way in and teach them and do it. So we went to the Ronald McDonald House for years, and we would always do their walk for kids and special events. They'd always invite us to show up there. We go to assisted living. We go to a lot of the schools for stress release, all ages. I mean, I've been in kindergarten classes, and I've been at Pepperdine University for law school when they're in their finals. We do the VA hospital. Newton was the first rabbit ever to go to Providence hospitals in LA. We were in the Burbank one, and so that was pretty cool. And you get so many of the staff that say, oh my God, we so needed this. I would rotate Ollie, my dog, and the rabbit. Libraries, the kids reading to them is amazing to me, because you get kids that come in and they say, we can't read. And then you just sit for a few minutes and they pet the animal and stuff. And then they end up reading a whole book because there's no peer pressure, you know, it's unconditional, and they're just, you know, the parents are in the room or at the other side of the room, and they just pet the animals, and then they read. Like one of the first times this little girl said, I can't read, and she read a whole book to my last rabbit, Oreo. And it's just, I mean, that's so powerful, you know, and to witness it live and firsthand. So and sometimes you have to educate the places you want to go to, because they're like, well, we don't have rabbits, or we never had rabbits. So they have to, you know, kind of investigate it a little bit, and then they're like, okay, he can come. So it's been great.
Thanks, Marcy. Broad diversity, which I'm not really surprised considering how long you've done this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Elizabeth, how about you with your guinea pig?
So the guinea pigs have been doing the Read to Me program with elementary schools and after school programs. But we also did an interesting program with an adult drug and alcohol recovery group. And it was sort of, it was a way to give people an opportunity to interact with an animal and possibly try out different pets. Because a lot of these clients were lower income. They may not own their own home, so a dog or a cat may not have been the best idea. So it was sort of giving them a test drive of what it would be like to own smaller animals. And so the guinea pigs were a great hit. We had I think it was a 12-week program, and all aspects of guinea pig care and interacting with the guinea pigs and all of that. And some education, but also just, as you say, stress relief and sort of goal-driven behavior too. So they were talking about drug and alcohol recovery and rebuilding a life. So I thought that was interesting. And I do agree with Marcy that you have to advocate and educate when you want to go to a place like a hospital or trying to think. Nursing homes usually have no problem. I've visited with the guinea pigs and rabbits at nursing homes. They don't mind. But hospitals, there's a higher hurdle, I think. And if you can develop a relationship with the volunteer office and do some education, they should be welcome, but you have to persist a little bit. They're not used to seeing a therapy guinea pig. They want to hear all about your therapy dog. So you do have to work a little harder to get into some places.
Thanks. That's an important point. We can talk a little bit more about that later too, in terms of how we advocate to facilities. I will say there are some facilities that when we say, like, they'll contact me and they'll have a contract and they'll want therapy dogs, and I'll say, are you sure you just want dogs? And they said, well, I didn't know there was anything else. And then I'll say, well, we actually have rabbits and guinea pigs. And they'll say that would be amazing because some of our residents, clients, patients, students, whatever it is, are scared of dogs. And cats also present for some people an allergy issue. And so there are some that are like, yes, send us the rabbits. And then I have to find the rabbits because we don't have quite as many. So it can be sort of a feast or famine kind of situation with rabbits and guinea pigs. So I'm going to go to our next slide. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I would say I would agree, because just recently we got a request for a therapy animal visit for a child who's on hospice or palliative care, a cancer patient, and he is afraid of dogs. So he does not want a therapy dog, and we're just scrambling to find somebody. He loves cats. I'm like, how about a guinea pig? So we're going to go and visit with him. But as you say, Jesse, it's feast or famine. Sometimes you're dying to get in somewhere, and other times they want a unique species, and then you're scrambling to try to find someone to fill that role.
Mm-hmm. So if what we've talked about so far sounds interesting, you're drawn to that type of volunteers, and the next step you have to ask yourself is my pet eligible? So I have some eligibility requirements up on the screen. I do want to show real quick what something Elizabeth shared with me about harness training her guinea pig. So I thought I would show you this video. Let me open it up here. Just give me a second. I probably should have had this. Let me move it to the right screen. Here we go. And Elizabeth, I'm going to probably leave the volume off and you can kind of talk through it.
Sure, I'm happy to. This is one of my guinea pigs, Cookie, learning how to put on his own harness, because we want the animals to actively participate in their visitation. So part of that is learning how to put on a harness. So he's being clicked and rewarded for putting his face through the harness, through the hole in the harness. And you can see he also was trying to bite it. No, you're not getting paid for that. Put your head through the harness and you'll get paid. Click and they gets a little treat. So ideally what we're doing is pairing good things like little food rewards with the presence of the harness, and then also rewarding him for actually putting on his own equipment. This is early days. He hasn't put his head all the way through yet, but I just want to show you how you get started. And it can be just as simple as putting the harness down on the ground. If the rabbit or the guinea pig goes and looks at it, give them a treat for doing that. Or if you have a guinea pig or a rabbit that's a little afraid of new things, leave the harness by the side of their food bowl or their pellets, wherever they go to eat. And that way they can not be fearful of the harness, have positive association with the harness, and then work toward them just actively putting on their harness so that they're ready to go to work. And that just helps it to be positive, because really it's not natural for these animals to have something restricting their body. They have to learn to tolerate it. So we don't want it to be an added stress when they're visiting.
Thanks. And we do consider that a requirement, that your animal can do that. So if your animal can't do that, then they aren't eligible to participate. We could also talk a little bit later about how rabbits and guinea pigs are transported in facilities, but the leash is important no matter the species. We can't have animals be getting away from their handlers, no matter what type of animal they are. Marcy, I don't know if you want to touch on harness training, or otherwise, I think it's also helpful to talk about house training for these smaller pets. So go ahead and chime in.
I can for a minute. I mean, here's the harness I used for Newton. So just his legs go through and it clips here. And he's always been, when I first bring him home, I put him in a basket and I pet him and get him used to that. And then he always, touch his feet, just like you do with the dogs. You want them to be used to you touching every part of them, their ears, their feet, their, whole body. So all mine have always just been really good. I just slip them into this, and then they sit in the basket, which I will show you. It's the basket in the slide, but I have it because I decorate them for all the holidays and stuff. But, and then when anybody would ever come over, when someone came over, I would let them pet them and get used to them and let my other animals interact so that they were kind of used to everything.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Jesse, one thing I know that Patty Anderson years ago told me about guinea pigs in particular, it's hard to find a harness that fits them well. The male guinea pigs like Moo here, they tend to be chunkier, and so they can wear a harness like this. It's like an H harness. But the females in particular, they're smaller, and so she recommends what's called a kitten harness, which, it connects at the top by this little, and then it's a figure-8 loop that you can tighten either way, and the clips on the bottom. So this might be a better type of harness for a smaller guinea pig, if you have one. And litter box training for guinea pigs, let me tell you, they're kind of funny. They usually don't pee or poop when they're with somebody. Like he's sitting here on this little mat, he's not peeing or pooping. But I'll tell you, as soon as I put him back into his little travel bedding cage, he would probably pee. So I don't know, I don't know if it's a natural thing for them or what, but I have never had to literally train a guinea pig to be housebroken. But I don't know if
That's
they do it
generally the
naturally.
case. Yeah. I do know, and this can be for a variety of reasons, but a lot of our rabbit and guinea pig handlers, I don't want to speak for Marcy or Elizabeth, keep their visits relatively short. So you can visit up to 2 hours a day with your pet, but even dog handlers often don't want to go all the way up to that 2-hour mark. As much as they love it and enjoy it, it is a lot of interaction and they get tired. But especially with smaller species, you're going to see that fatigue and overwhelm a little bit earlier. And we're going to talk about this too, how important it is to advocate for your animal, what's making them happy, what's making them comfortable. But that also is something to keep in mind with the quote unquote house training, is you might only have very brief visits, an hour long, not necessarily 2 hours long. So
Yeah, my rabbits would go forever. I mean, when I say forever, an hour without peeing or pooping. The guinea pigs, they travel with a little bin like this. It's got bedding and hay in it. So when they're not actively sitting on someone's lap or listening to someone read, I plop them back in here so they get a chance to have a potty break if they need it.
Yep, potty breaks are okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is just an opportunity for Marcy and Elizabeth to share anything else that is kind of species specific, unique, thinking about how you get your pet used to leaving their house if they're not used to it. That's actually a big thing for our cat handlers. And I've never had a rabbit or a guinea pig, so I can't speak to that. Anything else about leashing and harnessing? Frequency and length of being carried. Remember, we have a Flemish giant handler. Who's that? If you could raise your hand. Is that you, Catherine? Yeah. So obviously we have a lot of different sizes too. I should say for Flemish giants, we'll often approve a stroller, even though that isn't our favorite piece of equipment for folks to use for a lot of different reasons. It's not bad, it's just not something we approve easily, but for a Flemish giant, that's often gonna be the case because of the weight of the animal. So anyway, Marcy, Elizabeth, anything on these topics you want to share?
Well, we talked about the leashing and harness. When I would take the rabbit, and I didn't bring it all inside, but I have a travel cage that I put on top of what I call like a granny cart, and I put all the supplies in the cart, because sometimes you can't park. When I first started, I'm like, oh, I'll just carry it in, but sometimes you're not close enough to where you're going. So I figured out I take the cart and I put everything in it, which also weights it, and I put the travel cage on top, and then I have different baskets. So this is the basket decorated for Providence, because it fits in they wanted me to use their cart. So I had to get a basket, but I do it different for all the holidays. So then once I get to where I'm going, I take the rabbit out, Newton out, and put him in the basket with his leash and collar harness. And then, like Elizabeth said, she puts the guinea pig in, that his plastic carrier box with the stuff. So when somebody wasn't handling him or he needed a break, I would put him in his travel cage, because I always had it with me. So I have the cart, the cage, and the basket sits on top, and then I put it, on an ottoman or a bench or wherever it is we're visiting. But I always have the cage within arm's reach to, put him in it if he needs a break. And then that's where he would go to the bathroom. And in the basket, I have like a piece of foam rubber, so it's soft, but I cover it with a pee pad. So in case he went, I put like 2 or 3 of them, and I just roll it up and I can take it out. So
Great.
that works really well.
Great. I do want to just chime in real quick, Elizabeth, before you chime in. I am going to show a grooming video on the next slide, but you can talk grooming too now if you want. But Jana asked a question about, length of visits, depending on if it's intensive or not intensive. And I would just answer that, Jana, it's kind of up to you and what signals your pet is giving you when you visit. So there's no, right or wrong answer for how long you visit or what you do on visits. Every animal is going to have a different barometer for what feels intense to them or not. I always recommend to new handlers, the first time you visit anywhere, make it very short. In fact, even better, go first on your own without your pet for a tour, get a sense of what's going to be going on. But we don't want to overcommit to, say, a 90-minute visit and then realize, whoa, this is way more intense than I thought. So easing into it, and this is for all species, not just for rabbits and guinea pigs. We say that for every species. I think that's going to be critical in terms of understanding what's going to feel intense to your pet and not, because everyone is going to be different. The other thing is, during a visit, if you sign up for an hour, but your pet is chilling and having a great time and the facility asks you to stay another 15 minutes, go for it. If you sign up for 90 minutes and you realize this is really intense, my animal is tired, you get to stop that visit whenever you want. Your priority is your animal, not the clients, the patients, or the facility. And we tell the facilities that all the time. Yes, you're giving them a service, but your number one client is your pet. So I know that doesn't exactly answer your question, but without knowing Gizmo, I can't answer to Gizmo specifically, but you're empowered to kind of figure that out on your own. Anything on these topics you want to talk about, Elizabeth? Like I said, I have your grooming video, I think, on the next slide.
Yeah, I use Marcia's beautifully decorated baskets. I use it's a commercially available Sleepy Pod carrying case. And what I like about the Sleepy Pod is this. Inside, it has a mesh liner that suspends the animal so that they get some air circulation. Because I find the number one problem that I have with the guinea pigs is that they get hot. So I like them to have this little mesh suspense. It's like a little hammock they can sit in inside the mesh. And if it's really hot, like we're visiting outside or something like this and it's hot, I will even put like a little cooling pack in the bottom of this to give them a little air conditioning if they need it. And of course, if it's guinea pigs are sensitive to cold, of course, too. So if you're traveling from your car to a facility, you have to make sure that you keep them warm, wrap them up. I would say sometimes people use these little cuddle sacks for them, and they want to hold the guinea pig in a cuddle sack, which is fine. but really monitor your guinea pig because, you know, they're not gonna be panting like a dog, but, you'll notice that their ears will start getting pink. And so, or that, you know, you'll notice that they're gonna start getting uncomfortable if they're getting too hot. So it's important to really keep an eye on that, because I do find that when they're sitting on people's laps, they do get hot. What else? Leaving the house, I usually have them travel in pairs. You know, it's good to have moral support in the car, you know, and they just, they are in a little travel container with bedding and hay. And usually if they're comfortable, they'll sit and eat the whole time they're in the car. So if you just get them used to short periods being out, and if they're eating, they're happy. They're not scared. So that's one thing to monitor. There's no vaccinations that guinea pigs get, but we'll talk about grooming because they do. Guinea pigs, unlike rabbits, need grooming before every visit.
Just one quick thing on vaccinations. That's true. Pet Partners doesn't have any requirements for the species. I will say, again, facilities' lack of knowledge about the species. Sometimes they might say, I need to see proof of vaccination, but they're just doing whatever they're asking for the dogs, such as rabies. And so you may have to talk them through that. If they have any questions, you can always refer them to me. And to be very clear, I very rarely have facilities not listen to the handler about what's normal for their pet, but there may be a little bit of education to do about that.
Jesse, one quick
Mhm.
thing that I forgot, but and Elizabeth brought up. So the rabbits get really hot and they prefer the cold, but I always bring like a little travel fan that I can clip. Either this is I think a baby fan, a human baby fan, but it clips on and it's not very strong, but it's just enough to like cool them down. And I put it on, and you can, adjust it so it's not right on them, but just enough. It either could go on the cart, it could go on his cage, it could go on his basket, but I found it to be really helpful. And even in the car, if it's really hot and I don't want the air conditioning blowing right on them. So these portable little fans to me work really well. And I also freeze like small water bottles and I take those with me. So if he's really hot, because as people, of course, pet him and, he's sitting in his basket and stuff, they heat up. I just put the bottle in his basket, and he'll lay next to it or put his ear. When I had a lop ear, they, flop their ear over it and stuff. So, or a cold tile, or like the cooling blankets, like Elizabeth said. So.
Good advice. I'm learning so much here. I knew they heated. I didn't realize they heated quite that much. So thank you so much for sharing that. There's a question that came in here before we move on. Jana asked about her pet has a bonded girlfriend who doesn't like to travel. Any advice on soothing stress for these animals that are often so bonded to something or someone at home? Elizabeth or Marcy?
Maybe just try doing like short drives, like around the block. When I had Figgy and Newton, the first time I separated them, and I hadn't had two together before, and I forgot which one I brought the other one back. They wanted nothing to do with each other because now they have everybody's different scents on them and stuff. And I had talked to somebody and they said, just put them together in a smaller space and like drive around the block for 5 or 10 minutes. So they realize, they're still okay and it's still his partner. And then once I did that a couple of times, they were fine when they were separated for a short amount of time. And you could bring them, back together in the bigger space where they live.
So easing them in too. I mean, shorter durations being apart is also a good way to start too, rather than having the apartness happen suddenly for 2.5 hours while you drive to a facility or there for an hour drive back. That's a lot to ask. So easing into that and practicing that ahead of time. Elizabeth, anything to chime in on the bonded part, or otherwise we can move on?
No, I think that's excellent advice. And that's one of the ways that you can do kind of speed bonding with rabbits too, is you put them in a laundry basket and drive them around your car, in your car for a short period of time. And then I don't know if it's that shared stress experience that like bonds them back again, but it's just like Marcy said, it's like they have all these strange scents on them when they come back from visiting from a school or a hospital. And so the resident rabbit doesn't recognize them as the same rabbit. So it's hard. I mean, I think that's an excellent idea, is to just make sure that they get used to that brief separation and reacquainting so that they're not stressed out when they're separated. I mean, I had two guinea pigs that worked together, Lou and Cookie, and I would bring them together in one travel container, but only one guinea pig worked at a time. So that doesn't sound like it would work for your situation, Jenna. It's not one would not be a therapy animal, but if you had two small animals, you could bring two at a time, but only work one. And you'd have to make sure the other one is sequestered away safely.
Correct. I don't know if we have any dual handlers here, but if we do, that's just an important policy to bring up, that you only can be visiting with one at a time. Again, it comes back to that control part and facilities feeling confident that you have your animals in a managed situation. So yes, the one stays in a cage or sequestered, the other one can be out on leash or harness, and then you can swap them out. So if anybody has to, I don't think anybody mentioned that, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, we're going to move on just to make sure we have time. So we just talked about eligibility, but I want to talk about actual temperament for animals and what makes them a successful therapy animal. Pretty basic stuff here, in that they need to be people-oriented, sociable, friendly. They also need to remain calm. I'm aware these are prey species, and they are going to sometimes have responses that don't feel entirely calm. That's your job as a handler, to mitigate that, to navigate that, to remove your animal from the situation. I always like to tell people, and this goes for any species, therapy animals are not robots. They are going to have people or situations that they don't care for. That doesn't mean they can't be a therapy animal. What we're looking for is for them generally to be people-oriented, sociable, friendly, and calm. The other thing to keep in mind is making sure they can do all of that in distracting foreign environments and with foreign people. My dog, if you met her in my house or in my neighborhood, you would think she is a perfect therapy animal. She is all about the people, totally calm, totally relaxed. As soon as I take her to a new place, she doesn't care about people anymore. She's very easily distracted. She wants to sniff, she wants to play. She wouldn't be a good therapy animal because I can't get her back onto wanting to interact with people. So it's also important to think about your pet and how they do in environments that are not your home or not in their sphere of kind of familiarity. So those are some of the temperament things about animals. At Pet Partners, though, we believe that the human end of the leash is as important or more important than what the animal can do or what they can show or what their temperament is. And that's because in the relationship of a therapy animal team, you have the power. You get to decide if you're going to volunteer at all, where you volunteer, how long you volunteer, who you interact with. And in that power comes a lot of responsibility. So we look for, if you will, temperaments in our handlers as well. Of course, you need to be willing to interact with strangers and make conversation. A lot of the health benefits that we see from therapy animal volunteerism absolutely is from interacting with your pet, but it's also in interacting with you. The one piece I really want to highlight here is that we look for handlers who, and we've mentioned this already, but have the confidence to advocate for their animal. So somebody isn't petting your animal the way your animal prefers, or you don't feel safe in a situation with how your animal is being pet, you get the opportunity to end that visit, or if not end it, at least work to redirect people. So that human end of the leash is incredibly important. In a moment, we'll talk about our handler course, which is all about training you up to be able to navigate these types of situations in hospitals and in facilities. But just keep in mind, handlers as important as the animal. You'll also hear that when we talk about the evaluation. Time commitment. So we already talked about, you can set up your visits for whatever length of time you want, up to 2 hours. After 2 hours, you can no longer volunteer. In terms of how frequently you visit, that's up to you. Some of our volunteers go every week, some go once a month, some just go a few times a quarter. Depends on what fits for your schedule. The one thing we ask people to keep in mind when you're thinking through, do I have the time to do this? And if I do, where do I want to do it? How should I communicate my schedule to the facility? Is that Bathing and grooming your pet is an important part of therapy animal volunteerism. This is part of our commitment to infection prevention and control and hygiene. And so you do have to think about building that into your routine when you go on a visit. I do have a very short video from Elizabeth again. I'll send the longer version out after this call. Oh, sorry. Oh, I can't get it to open. That's my fault. Hold on. I should be getting it now. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, it's not opening. I checked it before.
That's okay. I should have done just the live version. I bathed him this morning. I could have just sent you a live feed.
Actually, I think I might have gotten it, but let's see here. I think it wants to show me an ad first. But I'm pretty sure this is the one. Let's give it a second to load. Oh, goodness, all the ads. I think this is it. This is the longer one, but at least we can show a little preview of grooming here, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
So
this is showing with the guinea pig, it's a little bit more involved. Now he's got long hair, so he's more high maintenance, but
okay,
you do have
maybe
to
I'll
trim-
just
Well,
I can send it out after.
That's
Okay,
fine.
go ahead.
Yeah, because we're gonna be trimming nails, make sure they're nice and smooth and not too long. We're gonna be cleaning ears. For male guinea pigs, you have to be aware that they have what's called a bore pocket, which is, it's kind of equivalent to like anal glands or something in a dog. And that can be filled with really foul smelling, messy stuff. So that has to be cleaned out with a Q-tip before they visit, because you don't want that coming out during a visit. And then the guinea pigs do get bathed because this is a hygiene and also a zoonotic disease concern, because one thing that guinea pigs can have and be asymptomatic carriers of is ringworm. So we're visiting with young children. We certainly don't want to give anybody ringworm. So before they go to visit, the guinea pigs get a bath with antifungal shampoo that would cure ringworm if they had it. I mean, they don't have it, but it's just a preventative measure. And then they have to be thoroughly dried so that they're not going out wet, because they're very susceptible to respiratory infections if they get cold and wet. So, I mean, the whole process for me can take about 45 minutes to an hour to bathe a guinea pig. So it is a time commitment.
Marcy, how about you with rabbits? What are the things that you think about with grooming and or bathing?
I trim his nails and I certainly brush him, because as much as they're tiny, I mean, I think Newton was like 3.7 pounds, so they're not very big. Or I mean, the Flemish Giants are big, but the ones I've had are small. But it's amazing how much they can shed. And even after you brush them, they still shed, but at least you get a lot of it out. So I would, brush him, comb him, trim his nails. And I have like a, sort of dry, wet shampoo, for small animals that I would use on them, but they're pretty self-cleaning. They're very cat characteristic. So he always was clean and trimmed and brushed. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Something about shedding too is when facilities invite, again, any species in, they understand that shedding's gonna happen. So it's not your goal to eliminate your animal's shedding, but reducing it is the important part. Okay. I'm going to pivot now to talking about the process of becoming a team, going through all of the steps. I know we have at least one current team on here, but for all the prospective folks, this is what you need to go through to become a therapy animal team. I'm not going to dive in on each of these steps. There's really just two I want to talk quite a bit about, which is step 2 there, which is take the handler course. And also sign up for and attend your team evaluation with your guinea pig or your rabbit. So those are the two we're going to dive in on the next slides. Elizabeth, somebody did chat in. They wanted to know your soap recommendation if you didn't, or shampoo, if you didn't see that. So as I said before, the human end of the leash is as important to pet partners as the animal end of the leash. And so we require every new team to take a handler course. You can take this in two formats. It can be either done online or in person. I will tell you that the availability of in-person workshops is somewhat sparse. Teaching those workshops is a volunteer role, and some communities have them and some don't. So you may not have both options available to you. I think about 80% of our handlers do the course online. There's pros and cons to the two different formats. Obviously, if it's in person, you can ask lots of questions and learn from a live person. But I will tell you too, with in-person workshops, 94% of the people attending are going to have dogs. So a lot of the questions are going to be dog related. Doesn't mean you can't ask rabbit or guinea pig questions, but you may not, as a handler of those species, get quite as much out of an in-person workshop. The online course, the pros of that, of course, you can do it at your own pace. So it takes about 5 hours total, but if you want to do 1 hour a day over the course of 5 days or whatever, you can do that. It also stays in your account, so you can revisit different portions of the course when you want to. There is nothing in these courses, whether you do it in person or online, that requires your animal. So it's not a, here's how you train your animal. It's actually training you, but the information that you get from it will help you understand what you need to do to prepare your pet. I will also say this, we make our handler training species agnostic, so it applies to everybody, but we also understand that because therapy rabbits and therapy guinea pigs aren't as common, we've created some special resources for you all as well that you can avail yourself of. So again, if you have a volunteer center account, which was the very first step here, is to start an account. Once you're logged in, right on the home page is a big box that says resources. Click that, type in your species, type in rabbit or type in guinea pig, and you will find what we call behavior packets. So what is the common behaviors of therapy rabbits or therapy guinea pigs? You'll also find an evaluation overview that goes through what are we going to ask a rabbit handler to do and what are we going to ask the rabbit to do. And you'll also find previous recordings of webinars like the one we're doing today. So I highly encourage you to not only take the course, but make sure you look through those resources that'll help you understand pet partners as it fits for your type of pet as well. And then once you've taken the course, you have the opportunity to get in front of a licensed team evaluator and be evaluated with your pet. And I'm going to let both Marcy and Elizabeth talk mostly about this in terms of what they've gone through and when they've delivered evaluations themselves. But just a couple things. The evaluation is about 30 to 45 minutes long. Just depends on the evaluator's style and depends a little bit on how quickly you move through the exercises. There's no bonus points for moving through them quickly, by the way. It's split into two portions, the skills portion and the aptitude portion. Skills comes first. This is looking at the skills that are appropriate for your species. These are, I don't want to say easier per se. They're not easier, but they're more simple. But then we moved into the aptitude portion where we are going to put in front of you and your pet scenarios that you'll see in a therapy animal visit. So loud noises, distractions, multiple people trying to pet your animal. And we're looking for not only how your animal responds to that, but how you help them through those situations. So again, are you advocating for your animal? Advocating can look like saying to the evaluator, hey, you know, my bunny doesn't like being pet there. Could you pet my bunny here? That's like a plus. That's not a minus. That's not to say that the evaluator isn't going to say, you know, I do need to make sure that your animal is willing to be touched this way, but they are going to give you positive points for being able to explain to them what your animal does and doesn't like, because that's what we're going to want to see you do on a visit. The final evaluation score, whether you pass or receive a not ready, is actually 50% you, 50% your pet. So your pet could do everything right, but if you aren't demonstrating those handler skills that you learn in the course, then your team will be given a not ready score, which means you have to come back and try again. So we really aren't kidding about that human end of the leash. Another final thing I want to say about evaluations related to your species is you might be in front of an evaluator who doesn't have a lot of experience with your species. Now, we do our best to get them trained up and to understand and to be able to deliver this, and they know what they're looking for. But don't be surprised if you also have to have a conversation with your evaluator again to advocate for your species. And I'm going to allow Marcy and Elizabeth to talk a little bit more about that. Again, they're qualified, they're able, they've been trained up, but it's very different when you see 100 dogs a year and maybe one rabbit or one guinea pig. So it can be a conversational, collegial process with your evaluator. So I'm going to stop there. Elizabeth, why don't we start with you? Do you want to talk at all about your experience evaluating these species or being evaluated yourself?
Yeah, I can speak to both because I've also been evaluated and have evaluated unusual species. I agree with talk to your evaluator. You are the expert. Even if, even when we talk about this, if you're handling a dog, a relatively common species, you're still the expert on your dog. So you have to advocate for your animal, what's best for them. I would recommend if you're setting up an evaluation with an evaluator, ask to be evaluated as the first or the last, ideally the first team. And that's because these are prey species. And although my guinea pigs and my rabbits are used to dogs and cats and other predators, they're not used to all the other predators that are coming through that evaluation space. So it's better to have something that's, if you can start first in the evaluation, they're not going to have additional sense of, the 10 other dogs that came before them, and it'll be less stressful. So if you can go first, great. Be prepared to actively educate the evaluator about handling and body language in your animal. Because like Jesse said, we're all sort of given a thumbnail sketch, and hopefully the evaluator will be proactive in knowing that they're evaluating a rabbit, perhaps, that they're going to read up about rabbit behavior, but it never hurts to reinforce that. And proactively guide the evaluator when they're doing the appearance and grooming exercise and the overall exam, because they're going to touch your animal everywhere, but you can help them. So always have a hand on your animal. And if they say, oh, I have to look at the animal's ears, you can help them. You can say, oh, yes, here's my guinea pig's ears, or especially if they want to look at the feet, you can hold your guinea pig like this if you want to. Here's my guinea pig's feet, here's the nails. You can help them and make it so that it's comfortable for your animal and how they're used to being handled. It's okay. You just have to be a little bit not forceful, but really, we want to make sure that the guinea pig doesn't feel manhandled. So however you're used to handling your guinea pig might be the best way to tell the evaluator to handle your guinea pig. So education, proactively guide, take breaks. I bring a little litter box tray with me. And if I think that there is some stressful exercise, usually I give them a break after the pass between 3 strangers, because that's a lot for them. They have to sit on 3 people's laps. I say, hey, can I give my guinea pig a break? And I'll take them and put them in the litter box. Give them a few seconds, because what if they had to pee or poop? You don't want them to pee or poop during the next exercise, and then you get an NR. So these are just the little tricks that I figured out over the years.
Thanks, Elizabeth. How about you, Marcy? What's been your experience over the years being evaluated with your rabbits?
My experience it has been very hard to find evaluators that do the rabbits. I've signed out, when you look online for evaluators, it says dogs only, dogs and cats. And for a number of years, I've had to go like an hour away to find somebody to do the rabbits. So happily, it was only once every 2 years that I had to do that. And they fill up really fast because there aren't very many or as many, the pocket pets, the guinea pigs, the rabbits, rats, evaluators. So my suggestion is if you need to get evaluated, you can sign up, I believe, 6 months in advance. So like if you're going to take the course and you'll be ready in August, go now. I mean, look online now for the evaluators and sign up now, because a lot of times one time I couldn't get anybody to take me in. And I think the vet exam, if I recall, is good for a year. So you don't have to do it like a week before you're ready. So I highly recommend that you do it as far in advance as you can, because not every place that does the evaluations will do the rabbits or the guinea pigs. So I learned that not the hard way, but over the course of, 25 years, you learn tips along the way. So that's really my tip for that. I think my last one with Newton was the closest one I did in like 15 years, but I signed up like 6 or 7 months in advance. And they do put you first and last. That's a great suggestion from Elizabeth, because a
Mhm.
lot of times the dogs aren't good. Your animal may be great with them, but the other dogs, if the dogs are there, are not great.
Mm.
I visited one time with 2 labs and they had to leave the facility because his dogs just couldn't not focus on my rabbit. So
Mhm.
he left.
Yep.
So yeah, so you have to kind of see, but that would be my suggestions.
That's a great suggestion, and I am going to guinea pig back on that, because um our evaluators are volunteers too. So as much as we encourage them to welcome all species, we also have to be mindful of the fact that they're doing this on a volunteer basis. And if it's most comfortable for them to do certain species, that's okay too. However, even if an evaluator says, because Marcy's right, when you look in our evaluator directory, they'll have species listed. You can still reach out to them and ask. First of all, some people don't always update with us what they're willing to evaluate. Secondly, they often, if you just say, I'd be happy to help, I'm really excited about this, a lot of times they'll say, okay. I think what they're concerned about is they're suddenly going to have 10 rabbits in front of them in one day, and they're going to be so overwhelmed by that. The other thing is, don't hesitate to reach out to our staff if you're feeling like, I have a guinea pig and I don't feel like I'm getting a response from an evaluator. We will help you. Last but not least, somebody asked us in the chat, if there's not an evaluator nearby, okay, that's one issue, but related, maybe there's an evaluator nearby, but they won't do your species. You can independently arrange an evaluation with somebody who is not a Pet Partners evaluator, but has species knowledge, specifically like a veterinarian. We've had to do this for, I know, Marcy, it's not all over the website, but we do allow this because we don't want anybody not to be able to get evaluated. So if you're geographically isolated, you can't find an evaluator, you've done due diligence finding one, contact us. You can independently arrange an evaluation. I will say though, as much as it stinks to travel an hour, if we see somebody an hour away who can do your rabbit, we're going to ask you to go to them. But if it's 4 hours away, we're not going to ask you to go to them. Keep in mind that it's only every 2 years, so we're not asking you to go there every week. We will work with you. That's the main thing I want you to take away from this, is we will work with you to find an evaluation. Don't hesitate to contact us. We're used to hearing from handlers of your species and helping them figure the evaluation out. Somebody else asked, how do you find an evaluation? So when you log into the Volunteer Center and you open up your registration, there's all the steps listed. Evaluation is one of them. When you click that evaluation step, it'll take you to the calendar where you can search in your area. So that's the best way to look for evaluations, is via that calendar. But again, if you run into any trouble, please email us. So
Jesse,
I
it's
can't,
also,
you know, go ahead.
one other point I want to say, you can help the evaluator also by saying, and hopefully this is the case, you can offer them having an expert in the species to come with you to help them. And that happened to me when I had to get my rabbits evaluated in New York City. The evaluator had a person who helped sort of interpret the body language of the rabbit. And she was a person who worked at I think she worked at the ASPCA, and she specifically took care of the rabbits. So she was the one who watched the evaluation and to make sure that the rabbits were comfortable. So if your evaluator is saying, oh no, I can only do dog or cat, you can say, look, if I can provide an expert to help you interpret, help you sort of score the score sheet for the animal, would you help? Maybe that's somebody who works in 4-H, or somebody who works at an exotic animal veterinary hospital, or someone who does rabbit or guinea pig rescue or something like that. That way, if you can connect your evaluator with a species expert, then they can do the evaluation in your hometown.
I just threw my email address in the chat. So if somebody already knows, I already looked for evaluations in my area. There are none. Just email me. I will help you out. I will point you to that independently arranged situation. And Marcy, that goes for you too. When you have another rabbit in the future and there's nobody anywhere nearby, I'll help you out.
Well, thank you. That's good to know.
Yep. And that's something, I mean, I'll be honest, it's because these two species don't present a ton of risk to us. It's okay using somebody who just has knowledge of the species, even if they don't have complete knowledge of therapy animal volunteerism. It's not our favorite thing, but it's just a necessary pathway we have to provide for some people. I believe that's all of our content. Let me just double check. Yep, you can read this on your own. This is the benefits of registering with Pet Partners. The big one is insurance. No facility will let you in without insurance. We provide you that insurance to cover your activities with your pet. And I know we only have 5 minutes left. We talked a lot. I just want to scroll through the chat and see if any questions were missed. But also, if you have a question and you want to shout it out, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so. Ooh, I scrolled too far.
This picture that you have up on the screen, that's how I travel. So that's the cart, his travel cage, and his basket. And obviously now he's out of the basket because we're at the place where we're volunteering, but that's how I travel with them.
Great, that's good. I'm glad I put that out here. I believe this is Marcy doing animal assisted crisis response in the California wildfires this fall, right?
Yes,
So we do
in January.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, fall. I said fall. January, you're right. You can be credentialed as a crisis response team, which means you can go provide services to people who have just experienced crisis or trauma, like acute crisis or trauma. And I can tell you, we're the only people who have rabbits and guinea pigs out doing that kind of work, which is really, really valuable. I don't want to keep people past time. So, oh, where do we find the crisis response info? So that is on our website. I will jot down though, Catherine, that I can send you a direct link to that. Marcy and Elizabeth, this is up to you, but I dropped my email address in there. I am a great contact if you need help finding an evaluation, you have questions about policies, questions about how you navigate the process. But if you have species specific questions, if Marcy and Elizabeth are willing, I would email them. So
Oh, absolutely.
they would be the folks if you have questions about bonded pairs, if you have questions about equipment. I can answer them, but they're going to give you a lot more direct information. So they'll drop those in. So make note of those before you hop off the call.
And just really quick too, I forgot the trading cards. I mean, people ask, it's like hi, does he have a card? Does he have a card? So this is Ollie's. These are my ones from Pet. I mean, I use them other places, but from Providence, from the hospital. And then on the back, you can put the stats. So it's like a baseball trading card, but people love them. The staff, the kids, the doctors, you walk in and they're like, I don't have Ollie's card. I don't have Newton's card. And they have them displayed and people take them down and they're like, somebody took Ollie's card. Somebody took Newton's card. I need another one. So I just think there's such a huge added value of when we visit, and the people love them. So I highly recommend getting trading cards.
Yeah, I agree. The trading cards are funny because especially if you're visiting in a hospital, you'll see like a lineup of like 9 dogs and like 1 guinea pig. It's pretty
Yes.
funny. And people love that. Just the
Yes.
uniqueness of it all. I also had stickers made, for Cookie and Moo, and I was visited by that kind of thing too, because I work a lot with children. The other thing I wanted to mention, because we do a lot of reading programs, there's great literature, and I think we're going to be sending out a list of books. I'm not sure. You can make your own. This is Marcy's book about her rabbit Oreo. So you can make your own book about your animal, which is really wonderful. Or there are commercially published books. This is a great book, The Rabbit Listen, by Cora Dorenfeld. Then you've got guinea pig books. One guinea pig is not enough. And these are great illustrated books that children, if you're going to a reading program in a library, I just keep a copy myself and bring them in the book bag with the guinea pigs, because the kids just love reading books to the guinea pig about guinea pigs. So that way, what would a guinea pig do? I mean, it's just, they're funny, but the kids love to read to a guinea pig about a guinea pig. And the same thing with the rabbits. I have a whole set of rabbit books too when I was doing the reading program with rabbits. So, but you can make your own. I highly recommend Snapfish or Shutterfly. You can make your own hardcover books using pictures of your own guinea pigs or rabbits.
Yeah. And when we read at the library, the librarian always puts out, if I had the rabbit, she'd put out a whole table of all their rabbit books. When I bring the dog, it's all dog books and stuff. And they love that. I mean, the kids just love that.
Yeah, those collateral items are good for educating about the species too. So, before I let everybody go, thank you so much, Marcy and Elizabeth, for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I could not have done this without you. So thank you. Thank you everybody for attending. We really hope that you will join us as therapy animal volunteers in the near future. We really want more and more rabbits and guinea pigs. People just love them. So we'd love to have you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.